Fragments of silicon, not guaranteed to keep you dry in the rain.
All right, welcome to the start of the 15th season of Fragments of Silicon. 15 seasons. I'm not sure if anyone here thought that we would be going on for this long, but, here we are. And, we still plan on doing this as long as we feel like doing this, I guess.
And yet we persist.
Yep. I mean, anyway, I'm your host, Adam. Joining me are Petty and Golix. In case you missed it, our fourth chair, Twilight Winter, is currently on sabbatical, let's say. He's currently dealing with work issues that are potentially conflicting with the show. He wasn't sure because it hadn't happened, but to be on the safe side, he went inactive. He doesn't know. We don't know if he'll be back. We'll see how that works out over the course of the season and take things from there. But in the meantime, it's the core trio. As far as Matt goes, I guess he's not coming on a regular basis, considering it's been several weeks since he was last on a Fragments episode. We do have plans to do Last News Desk on the Left. Yeah. But anyway, let's get to the news. This is going to be shorter this season because we have one less member. So, Petty, why don't you start us off this week?
Overall, it's been quiet over the break. I got into the Digimon card game, and my local card shop has weekly tournaments on Sunday, so that's nifty.
Cool, I'm hoping my local card shop will start having in-store events.
And as far as gaming goes, I picked up a couple games on the Steam sale. One of the big ones I've been playing is Lost Ruins. It's a kind of a Metroidvania. It's kind of interesting. And also I picked up Sonic Lost World because shameless Sonic fan here reporting.
I mean, you bought Sonic Lost World. I think the shameless part is known.
Looking over at Sonic 06 on my shelf.
Yeah. Believe me, if there's any fan base that doesn't really know the meaning of the word shame, it's the Sonic fan base.
Yeah. And yeah, overall it's been quiet. Next week or next Tuesday I'm gonna get some work done on my teeth, which is gonna be fun. So yeah, I guess next victim.
Well, that'd be you, Golix.
As I alluded to, it's been pretty rainy and with a mix of hot and cold over the last couple weeks, honestly, which has not been a lot of fun. So I haven't been sleeping great because of it. But let's see. I think we missed that the latest Super Robot Wars game has been announced for pre-release, or has been announced and put on Steam for pre-order at least in the West, which is very exciting for people who like that.
I mean, it's a PC release, so mod support.
Yeah.
Like, oh boy, like that's going to be interesting. Given,
Yeah. I hadn't even really thought about that. It's more just like I guess they kind of sidestepped it by just sidestepped all of the licensing issues by just making it one release that people can easily get for whatever region.
Amazing
Uh
how that works.
huh. I haven't pre-bought it yet because I'm trying to decide which version I want, because there's a DLC included version and then there's a DLC and fancy I think it's like the soundtrack in Super Robot Wars. Usually when a thing is doing a thing, you get like the theme song for the thing's show in the background. But it's usually just an instrumental version, and I think that version has vocals for it, along with an art book, a digital art book and stuff. So I'm trying to decide which one I want to try and get, because I definitely want to support it so that maybe they'll keep doing that. Otherwise, not a whole lot.
All right. Guess it's my go. Yeah, I wish I could say my break time was quiet, but unfortunately, that was not the case. About a week ago, my cat um, got into a fight. And
That's never good.
no. I'm like, well, like especially when when it happened, um, it was a real scare because he was actively bleeding. Couldn't see him too well because he's a black cat, and it was night, like 2 in the morning, and it wasn't helped that didn't really see him for the next 2 days. Plus, he's like 15 years old, so he's an old cat. So legitimately wasn't sure if he live. As far as taking him to the vet, well, he wasn't around to do that. Uh, so there was a real scare that I would have had to bury a cat during the break,
Mm-hmm.
but thankfully, once he I don't know calmed down or got once he felt good enough to approach me, got to look at his wounds. They weren't as bad as it was first thought. He definitely got cut, but they healed. That he's healing. He basically Isis is going to be fine, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, and the thing
but
about cat fights is that a lot of the time things get infected from that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, once again, by the time I was able to secure him, if such things had happened, if he were really in danger, it would have happened by then because you know thankfully he didn't starve or anything either. Also, because it is fucking summer, it's been rainy as hell outside, so wasn't worried about his water intake either. Oh God, no. Anyway, overall point is, the cat is fine. You know, thankfully he's at least physically going to be fine. Like mentally, he's still a bit shaken. Like he's still a lot quieter, a lot less rambunctious, but he's going back to his old ways. Like so, it's been a while since he's gotten into a fight that severe, and not the first scrap he's ever had. Um, I can't say that would ever be the last because cats.
Mm-hmm.
The thing of it is, don't know what he fought. Like, could have been another cat, could have been like a raccoon, um, could have been a possum, some animal, but thankfully that it was all in all some superficial damage. Like he's not missing any ear or anything like that. He's got both eyes. So anyway, outside of that, been playing a lot of random games. Most recently, I've been playing the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection because I really wanted to play Crystallis. Like, it holds up for the most part.
It's amusing that you got it for not a primarily fighting game, since that's what SNK is the vast majority of known for.
Well, here's the thing: if you were buying this package for that, you'd be sorely disappointed because it's the SNK. It's celebrating all of their pre-Neo Geo stuff.
Ah.
Yeah, I don't understand why that is, because I know they put out Neo Geo packages before. Might be has something to do with the fact that they are selling individual Neo Geo games on Steam. But even that's a fairly limited selection. Like the SNK Anniversary is all of their 80s arcade games and a few NES titles, including Crystallis. That was never an arcade game. Anyway, so that's my news for the week. So merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Rebecca Burger Becky Hieneman.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm sorry to hear about your cat.
Yeah. I'm like, the important thing is he's going to be fine.
Well, that's very, very good to hear. I mean, that's heartbreaking if you have to say goodbye to your kitty.
Yeah. I mean, one day, not today. But anyway, how's your leg doing?
My leg is doing a lot better now. I finally healed to the point where I can walk again, and I don't have all those bionic implants because, for those who don't know, about a year ago, I fell down the stairs, shattered my tibia and fibia on my left leg, and first they had to put me in traction for about 2.5 weeks. That was miserable. Then they had to implant 30 screws and 3 plates into my leg. And so I had to get around on a wheelchair and a walker for about 6 months. And then I healed to the point where the metal was actually sticking under my skin. So they had to go to another surgery to get it all out. But now I'm 100% natural leg. I'm all good, going to physical therapy, but I am walking now.
That's good to hear. That's very good to hear. How much more physical therapy do you have to do?
I would say maybe about 2 or 3 months, and it's mostly stretching exercises and strengthening because it's really better, if you haven't used your body, or at least a piece of your body, for almost a year, it atrophies. And my physical therapy is almost exclusively regaining what I had lost.
There are people on staff who can relate. But anyway, so moving from such grisly topics, right? So the game we are to talk about is Lawless Legend. Now, you might, long-time listeners might recall, we did talk about this last time we had Becky on the program, but that got interrupted by, pet-related plug incidents. So basically, if any questions sound familiar, it's, we are basically reconstructing things. Anyway, with that in mind, for the uninitiated, what is Lawless Legends?
All right, Lawless Legends is imagine Bard's Tale, but set in the Wild West. That is your elevator pitch. You're basically a settler to a new town, and by exploring, meeting up with people, you can either decide to be a rustler, an outlaw, or eventually become sheriff if you manage to solve the puzzles and the mysteries of the land. It's set in the areas of Montana, Idaho, Eastern Washington. It is based on real-world geography and on actual Indian lore.
Okay. Quite a bit to unpack there. I suppose in terms of Indian lore, like from what tribes are we drawing from here?
I don't remember the name of the tribe. Seth is the guy who actually has been doing this design. I know we hired a Native American. Her name is Rain, and she went through all of our lore to verify that it was authentic. So yeah, we had to make a lot of changes, but we actually did get a Native American consultant to verify that we aren't offending anyone with our interpretation of, because there's some metaphysical, there's spirits and ghosts and some supernatural of things that occur in the course of the storytelling, which of course is fictional, but it is based on the actual lore of their tribe.
Huh. I mean, that's good to hear, especially since, popular media hasn't exactly had a good track record when it comes to native depiction.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I suppose it's especially poignant with what's going on in the news right now. But
Which news?
The whatchamacallem schools thing, probably.
yeah,
Oh, that one.
the residential schools. Yeah, that is a whole host of history we do not have the time for. Like, oh no.
We really don't have time on last news desk for that.
Definitely some truncation there. Anyway, now, what sorts of riddles and mysteries are befouling the land?
Well, basically, some of the lore of the game is, of course, just some outlaws are causing trouble, cattle rustling. However, the farmers are reporting that there have been crop failures, and the cows themselves are disappearing. They don't understand why. And it turns out that there was a native spirit who's upset because the settlers are here, and the settlers disrupt one of their sacred locations. And your job is to go over working, finding a Native American who, one of the shaman, to work with them to reconsecrate this particular land in order to stop this spirit from basically trying to destroy the land and kill everybody. Everybody alike, because they don't. Spirits really don't like it when you desecrate their land. So
Generally, yeah.
I really can't get into more into it because, unfortunately, that would go into spoiler territory. Needless to say, start off in a standard Western town. You're solving the usual problems, stopping bank robberies, going into barroom brawls, going around in the area to, prospecting for gold in order for you to, get some cash. And of course, if you happen to stop some cattle rustlers, and either you can keep the cattle and sell it and be a bad guy, or you can put the cattle back where they found it and be a good guy. Those are all things you could do in the game.
Okay. Well, you bring up the morality system. How flexible is it? Like, is it binary or is it kind of scaling?
It scales.
Okay,
It scales.
Okay, that's actually good because, not gonna lie, a lot of morality systems, especially like the Xbox 360 generation, binary. It's like you're either Mother Teresa or Hitler, and nothing in between.
You can be, if you want to, play this game and murder everybody, but you still, if you manage to reconsecrate the land, you'll still get the good ending. It's still, the gods are gonna look at you like, you wanted to save the land? Okay, but fine. But yeah, but there you go.
Yeah, it reminds me of my playthrough of Jade Empire. Played the villain the whole way through, but made the proper righteous choice, and got the other side. And anyway,
well, essentially, your end game here is that by reconsecrating land and so forth, you've you appease the spirit, so he's no longer like destroying everything and stuff like that. And at that point, you can now live your life as a cattle rustler or a claim jumper. Not at least you don't have to live in fear of a spirit trying to eat you. So there you go.
I mean, there are definitely practical reasons to not wanting spirits on the land.
Angry spirits. No, spirits are fine as long as they're not pissed off at you.
Right. And okay, outside of spirits, you mentioned cattle rustlers. Are they a generic enemy or like
Just generic. I mean, there are some storylines and stuff like that. I myself don't know all the specifics because we're still in the middle of writing all of the clue book. And they're still doing some last minute changes of stories. So, there's some things that may still end up on the cutting room floor. But the game itself is pretty much done in the sense that the engine is done. The stuff is just like little issues with the scenarios. Like if you did this and that, then are the natives going to be mad at you, or is the townspeople going to be mad at you? All the scaling, because after all, when you have flexible scaling, it makes testing everything a pain in the rear.
How painful are we talking about here?
It's not that it's painful. It's just that there's so many branches with the storytelling, and because this is totally non-linear. I mean, you start the game off in one town, but you could, if you wanted to, just leave the town and go straight to a mining colony and start doing all the adventures there, and not solving anything in the town. And any storylines that require you to solve something in the town first before the mines, well, we still have to have a storyline saying, hey, you're great. You're brand new in town. Thanks for helping us in the mine. But then when you go back to the town, now they say, hey, aren't you the guy who solved, or the girl who solved that stuff in the mine? Instead of, hey, we're at the town. We have some people trying, some Indians attacking us. So you need to stop them. And of course, the Indians are pissed off because these people have taken their land. And so which side do you choose? And all those different story threads means that we have to have text that matches up, and that's where we're going with, is that we will be playing the game and find that, oh wait, now that we played the game in this manner, now when we get to this town, they're going to say, oh, you solved this thing at the main village, at the fort, but it makes no mention whatsoever of the adventures you had in the mine, because you actually somehow survived getting to the mine with a level 1 character. Congrats. But now we have to factor that in. And that's the biggest problem with making it, like when I was doing both Bard's Tale 3 and Dragon Wars, especially Dragon Wars, the game is totally non-linear, and that took up easily half of my development time, was figuring out all of the, okay, if you did this in this order, how do I deal with it? And we're dealing with that very same type of methodology. Because, non-linear gameplay is hard.
I'm not going to doubt that. Like, it sounds an order of magnitude more complicated than linear gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, like when we did Bard's Tale 3, we controlled that by, you had to solve all the puzzles first in the Ruined Scarab Bray, and then you get a spell which takes you to the first alternate dimension. But that means now, once you get to the alternate dimension, we can assume the stories, all that are in Scarab Bray, have been done, so all the text that it gives you are all based on, oh, you're the one who did this in this tavern, oh, this is what you did at this blah. So because we could assume that, because you had to go from A to B to C to D. Native a lot easier. But with Dragon Wars, there was like 7 different ways of leaving that frickin' prison at the very beginning of the game. And I have a very, very thick book in my drawer of the original game design document of Dragon Wars. And that ended up being about 1/3 of the text that actually ended up in the game, because you were always figuring out, oh, but what if you did this? Now I have to add that. What if you did this? I gotta do that. And welcome back to Dragon Wars storytelling.
And it's also worth noting that this isn't just this isn't just a game that has the appearance of an old school RPG. It it's new, but it's being developed on the old hardware, correct?
Yep, it runs just fine on an Apple IIc. This is an Apple II game. It's on 4 floppy disks. And if you manage to buy it on Steam or something, it basically runs on an Apple II emulator we supply, and you are playing an Apple II game.
Like,
Being a comparable game. Basically, same idea.
Yeah, I've seen a fair amount of these kind of these kind of, I don't know. I hesitate to use the word homebrew since it's computer. But was there any particular impetus to make this an Apple II game?
Because we could.
The old why?
It's like,
because.
There's your answer. It's one where now I can't claim credit for the creation of this game. That is done by Seth Sternberger and his friend Brandon. They were working on the game for well over 5 years before I got involved. And they were doing it already when the Apple II was long dead, but they did it because why not? That literally was their reason. Why not? And of course, all their development tools are based on the PC using modern hardware and so forth. But when the data is all compiled and prepared, it's put onto an Apple II emulator and it's running on Apple II hardware.
So I suppose the question that beckons from this is, how is developing Lawless Legends compared to Dragon Wars or Bard's Tale 3? It's the same environment, but you've got modern tools.
Oh, I would have killed. I would have so killed to have the development environment I'm running with Lawless Legends when I was developing my Apple II games. I've actually ported my Apple II games because I still have the source code to all, and I have them run, compiling on the PC, and it still builds the Apple II games. I mean, don't get confused. This is not a port. This is like the source code to Dragon Wars, the source code to Bard's Tale 3, so forth. But right now, on my modern PC, I can build all of Bard's Tale 3 in literally half a second. Just hit return, everything is built. 1/2 second, discs are ready. Whereas when I was doing this back in the day, I was building it on an Apple IIe with an accelerator card. And even though it was running at 8 megahertz using a RAM disk, it still took me like about 5-6 minutes to build everything. So, I'd make a change to the code, then I would have to wait 5 or 6 minutes before the game is built, and then I could go ahead and test the change. Where here, I pretty much, as soon as I make the change, I hit return. And then the emulator's right where I left off, and I can then test that very fix instantly. And because, with an emulator, you could actually snapshot where you were in the game. And so I'm like right off in the next town, sitting there. I load up the game. I'm still in that town. The only thing I do is I press a secret key, which forces it to reload all the map data. And then at that point, the text has changed. It's like, oh, okay, the spelling error is fixed, or this new line of text just appeared, so forth. And my iteration times is like maybe 20 seconds. I'd be on Visual Studio Code, make a change in the text, hit save, hit build, hit a key on the Apple II emulator, and there it is. That's a fix. And then I go ahead and play a little bit more. Oh, found a problem. Go in here, do the shit, make a change in the source, basics, and it's like I would have. Oh, if I had that, I could have easily been churning out an RPG like maybe every 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, such is the limitations of that age. But, thankfully to these modern times, development can be faster in some cases. Like, I pour one out for everyone who's messed around with Unity.
Oh, God, yes. Or Unreal. Pour another one out for the Unreal developers. Yep. They need their love.
Yeah. Like, I could go on. Like, just the amount of people we have on this program who they thought it was going to be a lot easier than it was. Like, and every time, it took a lot longer than I expected. anyway, so how far along is Lawless Legends in terms of development?
Like I said, the engine is done. The actual you know, the technology is done. It literally is fixing little map bugs, like fixing a typo. Now, playing the game and finding, oh, if I solve this puzzle first and I go to this character, he should mention that I accomplished this. Let's add text. That literally is the stage we're at. So the art is done, the audio is done, the stuff done. It's just some text that needs to be finished up. We expect to be locking down everything probably in a week or two. And then after that, in fact, just to put it in perspective, only today did I get the final art for the box. So, we are. I mean, I've got a closet full of like Lawless Legend badges now, the USB sticks that look like a little floppy disk. I have boxes of floppy disks in the garage ready to be duplicated. So, but unfortunately, I can't print the boxes until I had the front page art, the box art, and that was just handed to me today. So I'm expecting to go into a full announcement of the game in about 2 weeks, and I'll be putting up demos up on Steam, Epic Games, and GOG, which you can just download for free and play the game. And then the actual commercial version will be available on, of course, Steam, etc. The usual suspects. With an Apple II emulator, and of course we will sell on Amazon the actual deluxe version of the game, which is going to be in a box with actual floppies, printed disc sleeves. It'll come with a map. It'll come with a metal, not plastic, a metal sheriff's badge that says Lawless Legends on it, some stickers, and the game will also come in the box on a USB stick that will look like a little floppy disk that will contain the Mac and PC version, which is essentially a Mac and PC based emulator for an Apple II that'll just run the game for you.
Will there be a very detailed manual in that has lore that couldn't fit into the game?
Oh yeah, I mean the digital version will have a PDF, but in the actual box you will come with a manual. That's why you're buying the manual. Come on, buy the box. That's why we want you to buy the box.
Yeah, that brings back some memories.
As long as you don't have to get the box with the manual in it to get like 5 different kinds of copy protection.
There is no copy protection. There's no paragraph books. There's none of that.
No code wheels.
No code wheels. Let's face it. I mean, yeah, it's an Apple II. There's no way in heck we're ever going to be able to copy protect it, so why bother?
No unphotographable
Oh, you mean the red
pictures.
copy paper?
Yeah.
Yes.
Unphotocopyable, I meant.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
to be fair, they're doing things on an Apple II, not a Spectrum ZX Spectrum.
My grandfather had a Apple II something, I think, and we had SimCity, and it had one of those because we had a photocopy of the unphotocopyable page that was still vaguely legible.
Yeah, I mean, there were wills and ways with these things, but
Yep,
anyway,
but essentially, it's our motivation is that if this game actually sells really, really well, you may expect a sequel or maybe a new game. Not necessarily Lawless Legends, but something else on the Apple II, or maybe some other platform, old school style. Of course, we did this game not because we were going to plan on making any money, because we're not silly. We did it because we could. That literally is our motivation, because we can.
I mean, like I said, it's not so unusual when we've had people putting things out on like the Game Boy, like for example, other old systems, the NES, Genesis. So having old school computer representation doesn't surprise me. I suppose in that vein, any plans to explore any of the other old systems like the Commodore 64, the Amiga, etc., etc.?
There is already announced. There's a game I'm doing, which I can announce, is Nox Arceus. We're doing the 2GS version. So
Okay.
it will be coming out for the Apple 2GS. It is Nox Arceus, based on the same source code. The only difference is all the art and music has been redone specifically for the Apple 2GS. So if you have an Apple 2GS, you can play it natively on a floppy disk. Or you could just use an Apple 2GS emulator, Kegs GS or something, and play it on your PC and Mac. But it's a huge visual and audio upgrade from the original game. Now, there is one other game that we're looking at. It was born, of all things, on the VIC-20. So we're looking at maybe a remastering of that, but actually a real remaster, as in it's made natively for Windows. But, there's nothing that says we couldn't also sell the original game in the original cartridge, because why not?
I'm like, geez, the VIC-20. I'm like, I won't say that wasn't popular, but yeah, that kind of gets written between the PET and the Commodore 64. Like, I don't know. Do you have any experience working on the VIC-20?
I did 4 games on it.
Ah,
I did Chuck Norris Super Kicks. I did Robin Hood, Final Eclipse, and worked on a game called Moody's Adventures in Iceland or something like that.
like,
Yeah, I did those in 1982. Yeah, it was around 1982 was when I did those. Then I switched over to the Commodore 64, did Final Eclipse for the Commodore 64, and then I did all my games for the Apple II C64, which is like Mind Shadow, Tracer Sanction, Borrow Time. And for Atari 800, I did a game called Racing Destruction Set. You probably heard about that one. So
Yeah.
I know these pieces of hardware. So like, it's really a matter of, which one do I feel like making a game on? And that's really where it is. And of course, anybody who knows my history knows I have a big soft spot for the Apple II. So hence, when the opportunity came to publish Lawless Legends for the Apple II, I jumped on it.
Right. I suppose to flip the question a bit there, are there any like old school platforms you're not familiar with?
The only platform I really didn't get that much experience on is the Atari ST. That's the only one, because I've done stuff on Amiga, I've done stuff on Dreamcast, the Game Boy, both Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advanced, 3DO. I did like 9 3DO games.
I mean,
Yeah, pity me, please. But the Atari ST is like a platform that, if I was to do a game on the Atari ST, I would be spending half my time learning the hardware and the other half actually writing the game.
I'm assuming that doesn't apply to stuff like the BBC Micro or the MSX.
I did some stuff on the MSX, because mostly back I was trying to learn how to do the Coleco when I saw the MSX was almost identical to the ColecoVision. I worked on both the MSX and the ColecoVision. I never published a game, but I did like demos and verified that my ROM emulator worked on them, and just did color patterns and things, and found that literally the 2 pieces of hardware are almost identical, except just where the hardware registers were located. Otherwise, they're both Z80. They both use the TI video chip. That's things like that. But the BBC, I will have to say, BBC Micro, no, never worked on that one.
Maybe in time. Anyway, so getting back to Lawless Legends here, how do things like the combat and work? I mean, I'm assuming like you can shoot. Is there any melee combat?
It's done Bard's Tale style. You'll see the bad guys in the image on the screen, and then there's just some text on the side that says, you see such and such 3 outlaws, this, and it's going to say like some are 10 feet away, some are not. And at that point it says, what do you want to do? Do you want to attack? Do you want to shoot? Do you want to, change weapons? Do you want to run away? Or do you want to surrender? And you make your choices, and the game will then roll the dice, print out what happened, and then you play again. But it's pretty much cut from the very same cloth as like Wasteland or Bard's Tale, Dragon Wars, Wizardry. I mean, they're all cut from the very same cloth as to how combat works.
All right. And given that there's a supernatural element to Lawless Legends here, does that mean there's some sort of magic system?
Oh heck yes! If you're a shaman, or you use shamanic items, you can cast spells. But the
Okay.
spells are usually very, very minor spells like healing, summoning wind, which confuses the other guys and stuff like that. There's not very many spells. And that was done intentionally because we were trying to create Bard's Tale. We were trying to focus that if you wanted to do combat, you'd either use a rope to lasso the other guy, or you'd use your gun and pick which one, a Winchester, a Colt. And of course, make sure you have the ammo for it, or a Bowie knife. But then again, if you want to, you could just pull out the shamanic rod to basically, ask for healing or increase your luck. Essentially the same thing. It's like, cast a prayer and the spirits may hear you.
And given that this is an old school flavor of RPG, do you have to keep track of your food and or drink levels?
No.
Okay, good.
That was done deliberately because it was like, yeah, it's a play mechanic that would add some difficulty, but it just didn't work. It was just, like certain games, like what was the original Ultima one? Akalabeth. The biggest complaint, Akalabeth. The biggest complaint people had was that you start the game and then you're dead in like 100 moves because you ran out of food and you didn't know what you were doing.
Yep.
We, like Wasteland had that same mechanic. Whereas when you play the Bard's Tale, Dragon Wars games, we don't use the concept of food per se as a way of saying when you run out of food you will die. So that's not in this game, and that was done by design. Only because we want you to have fun just playing the game and take your time, because that's the biggest problem with the food mechanic is it literally puts the game on a timer.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of that, nor a fan of you gotta do X thing in Y amount of time. Like, looking at you, Fallout 1. Like,
well, Fallout 1 and Bard's Tale 2. Remember, Bard's Tale 2 had the Spectre snares, where once the puzzle started, you had an X amount of time to solve the puzzle, or you instantly die regardless of hit points.
I didn't play Bard's Tale 2. Like,
don't worry, not that many people did based on sales.
Anyway. And so getting back to the big box edition, is it a big box or is it like a small box?
It's modeled after old Interplay boxes, so it is it's not, let's say, really really big, but it's about the size of 2 DVD cases side by side, and it is taller and deeper. But if you've ever seen the old Interplay boxes in which there's a sleeve that goes over the inner box, and you just put the sleeve on to denote what the game is, but inside it's just a generic box that says Interplay, and then you open that box and inside's the stuff. We modeled it exactly as to the Interplay box, even to the size. So if you actually take our game and slide it onto your shelf with your Interplay games, that have the sleeves on them, you'd say, "Oh, it's another Interplay game."
Neat. And how many copies are you planning to print out?
I'm planning on making an initial run of 1,000 copies. Now, granted, if we don't sell them all, well, then I'll have a garage full of copies of the game. If I do sell them, I can have more made, because I know where I got the materials. But, I'm going to make about 1,000 copies, but it's really back to, hey, if people keep buying them, we'll make more.
Fair enough. And let's see here. So, what else is coming out from Old School?
Well, I'm able to announce today, because we just signed the contract, we're going to remaster Dark Heart of Urkurl.
Can't say I'm familiar with that one offhand.
Nope, it's an obscure game, but it was released by Broderbund in 1989, and basically it's a Bard's Tale-like game, and we were able to obtain the game. So we actually bought the game. and now we have it, and we are going to be publishing the original DOS version and on Good Old Games and so forth. Now, it's already on Good Old Games under a different publisher, but we bought it from that publisher. But we'll be releasing on Steam, Epic, etc. But we are looking at remastering the game, kind of like what happened with the Bard's Tale trilogy remastered.
Mhm.
That's what we're pretty much going to be doing with this game. And of course, as we work with this one, we have at least 2 other games we're already working on getting the contracts signed that will be remastering. And of course, they're far more popular. But unfortunately, until a contract is signed, I have to keep my mouth shut.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Shifting back to Lawless Legends, have you determined a price point for everything yet?
We're basically mimicking everything with Nox Arceus. So, like the digital-only version is going to be like $29.95, so forth. Either $34.95, $29. I'm going to look at but basically whatever Nox Arceus is going for. We're basically modeling after that. The deluxe box version, we haven't decided to be either $79.95 or $99.95. We haven't decided yet, but it's going to be in that range. But that's because there's a lot of stuff in that box. I mean, 4 floppy disks, stickers, the metal badge, the map, the manual, the USB stick that looks like a floppy disk. There's a couple other things in there too. Oh yes, the bag of gold. We actually have a little burlap bag that has some fake gold inside of it. Yeah, we're not going to be giving you real gold for $79.95.
Some iron pyrite.
But I can buy a facial mask spread that has real gold in it at the grocery store, and it only costs $1 more than the regular.
Then you should just buy that.
I'm kidding. Obviously, there's a minute amount. The funny thing about gold is because you can get it so flat, so thin, you can have it look like there's an amount of it and have it be basically none.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do know that for specific, but there's going to be like 4 or 5 boxes, but these are intended for public consumption, but they're intended for like Seth and myself, which is actually going to have real gold in the box. But the real gold is going to be like about $10 worth of gold dust. I mean, a little tiny plastic bag, mostly because we can then say, yes, it has real gold. But so if anybody wants to, hit me over the head and steal my box thinking that there's like $1,000 of gold in there, I'm going to tell you, no.
Yeah, we got one of our family went to Alaska and brought back real gold souvenirs that are like a little bit of gold foils in a small bottle of oil or water or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks kind of impressive, but it's no amount.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like in these particular boxes, like I'm going to give one to Seth and Brandon and so forth because they're the ones who developed the game. It's going to actually say now with real gold.
And I guess my final question in regards to Lawless Legends is, any plans to do like a mobile version of the game down the line?
Possibly. The only question is, how do you make money on a mobile game? Because as you know, unless the game's free to play, nobody buys mobile games. It's just like I could put it up on mobile for $4.99 and sell 3 copies. But for I have to put in the game, play the game, do 5 moves, and then it runs a freaking ad. And then you play the game, you go to a puzzle, and before you start a combat, you got to play an ad. And it's like, do you really want to play that?
Alternately, you can only play this game for 15 minutes at a time.
Yeah, something like that.
Then
It's
you
just
have to
one
wait
where,
for it to charge.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I would explore doing the shareware idea, where you download the game for free, you play the game, but once you solve the puzzles in the outpost, then the game says, all right, great, thanks for the demo. Please give me like $2.99 and we'll unlock the rest of the game. Otherwise, keep playing in the outpost, but we won't let you get on the train to get to any other town. And the old Wolfenstein 3D Doom shareware model, which is give them a taste for free and then make them pay $9.99 or $4. In this case, mobile's like $2.99. But
Yep.
that's a way that we can make the game on mobile that's not going to annoy the heck out of you. Because I myself don't really want to do any sort of a mobile game in which that's the way it has to make money. It's by running incessant ads in your face until you hate my guts, which should be like 2, maybe 3 ads at most. Then
Right.
you'll hate my guts. Anyway.
I guess the other answer is getting lucky enough to get on like Apple Arcade.
I'd have to first talk to Apple, but unfortunately, the problem with Apple Arcade has always been exclusive. They will only put you on Apple Arcade if you commit that the game's only available on Apple Arcade.
Right.
And that means that, oh, then I can't sell it on PC and Mac. Then where am I, But then again, if they wrote me a check, for, say, $70,000, and at that point, so it's like, well, there's all my profits, all of them. Sure, we'll make it completely iOS only, no problem.
I mean, I guess there's Netflix now.
Hey, I wouldn't. I'll take anybody. I mean, hell, I'll put it on Stadia. I'll put it on anything. I mean, the only issue is whatever console or platform it's on has to be something that supports a keyboard. Because since this is an Apple II game and it's designed to be played on a keyboard, as long as the platform has a keyboard or at least a virtual keyboard like an iPhone would, then the game could be played.
Worth noting. Anyway, I'll see if my colleagues here have any further questions for you.
I think I'm good.
Anyone else?
Alex?
He probably muted himself.
Yeah. So I guess he's good. All right.
Yeah, I could throw a cat at you if you want.
That probably wouldn't be very good for the cat.
No, and definitely not for your face when it lands there.
No. Anyway, so Becky, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being with us here today.
Thank you for the invite.
No problem. No problem. So, is Lawless Legends available for pre-order yet?
Probably about 2 weeks, because right now that we actually have the box designed, the problem is that I can only do pre-orders when I actually have a firm ship date, which now that we have the box art, I can now start looking at actually saying, hey, on such and such date, we'll be shipping the game, so I can then take pre-orders. Pre-orders should be very, very soon, though. I mean, really soon.
Okay.
So, if you want to know more, of course, come to lawlesslegends.com to read up about the game. Go to Old Skuul, OLDESKUUL, both on Twitter and on the web. And of course, if you want to follow me, it's Burger Becky, BURGERBECKY on pretty much everything.
Okay. Betty, play us to the next segment. All right, welcome to the topic of discussion. So this week, it's a tale of two systems. At least, I guess, a tale of, I don't know, they're not full systems. One is a system refresh, and the other is a handheld version of a computer. So kind of a weird place. But I am, of course, talking about the Nintendo Switch OLED edition and the Steam, the Steam Deck. All right, they put out a few of these things. Right. Since these are two similar products, the media can't help but pit these two together, even though, and I know Valve put out the Steam Deck announcement on the day that the Nintendo Switch OLED edition went up for pre-order. They're still occupying two different substrata for the most part. It's okay. First of all, the Nintendo Switch is its own platform with its own games. That's kind of important. Versus the Steam Deck, which is okay. It is running the by default a version of Steam Proton based off of a specific Linux fork that I don't remember offhand, but you can it's still a computer. It's still essentially a PC where and if I'm remembering correctly, it has an SD card slot. So if you want to run a Windows on this, you can run Windows on it.
I think it
If you
also has
want
an NVMe drive that you can put a new hard drive into it.
right, which is why fucking Ubisoft kind of showed their ass there. I'm trying to remember if it was today or yesterday, but recently they said, we'll put stuff on the Valve Steam Deck if it sells enough. I'm like, motherfucker, your games are already on the thing because your games are already on Steam. Like, this shows you how much they're paying attention to this.
Well, are they still requiring you to get Uplay for even if you buy it on Steam?
Probably, but keep in mind they've been on Steam long enough where not all of their games have fucking Uplay in them.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you buy something from say 2007, it's not going to have Uplay in it. So if you get like Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Vegas 1 or 2, it's not going to have Uplay. Just to cite one example. I mean, you go far enough up on the timeline, yeah, you're still going to need Uplay. But here's the thing: you're going to be able to access Uplay. You're going to be able to access the Epic Games Store. You're going to be able to access other storefronts because it's a PC. It's running fucking Linux. It's open source.
Mm-hmm.
Like you might have to work at a bit of the specifics, but it's not a closed platform, which is why Tim fucking Sweeney of all people was praising the device not too long ago.
And I bet that hurt your soul saying that.
Mm-hmm.
It did. Because this
Your
motherfucker
poor soul.
well, because this guy said Linux was worthless, Steam is using Linux. So
I think
how
I
that
can hear
works.
the Wawa machine from here.
Yeah, it's like I have a lot of problems with what he says, but that's neither here nor there. Like anyway, but some people are calling it the actual Switch Pro, and not really, because
Yeah, it's more like a Switch Lite or Lite with the GH for the friggin' Game Boy Pocket that just had backlighting.
yeah, I'm like, or the Steam Deck is showing why Nintendo hasn't done a Switch Pro. It's certainly not a Switch Pro that could run the latest AAA games competently. Because the OLED edition is running for $350, and I'll grant you the lowest one here is running for $400, but that's not the one that the power users are looking at. Like they're looking at either the 529 edition or the 649. The one with 512 gigabytes and a solid state drive in it, among other things. I mean, this version is like about double the price of a Nintendo Switch OLED edition. Like, but the thing of it is, Nintendo hasn't really come up with a reason why they need a new Nintendo Switch, a Switch Pro.
Well,
And
some of their first party games have been showing a little bit of bucking against the limitations of the system, but
right, but that's not. But keep in mind, when people are citing the need for a new Nintendo Switch, they're citing third parties, and they're citing the larger, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X are things now kind of deals. But Nintendo's not really thinking in those terms. Nintendo never really, I mean, they think more in those terms now, but it's still a matter of what does Nintendo need at any given moment? And Nintendo hasn't really announced a game or a gimmick or a whatever that really needs a pro version. Like, so that's why this is less new Nintendo 3DS and more, Nintendo DS XL. You know,
Oh,
a
and
more
and that's a good point. Last time they did a hardware upgrade mid-generation, actually the last 3 times,
Mhm.
2, 3 times, DSi and the new 3DS,
Right.
they barely released any games that could take advantage of the upgrades because they didn't want to have people buy games for their 3DS and say, "Oh, that doesn't actually work."
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's always the problem with introducing a mid generation refresh. Like, an even more extreme example is actually like the PS4 Pro. Like, there was no game that was built to take a specific advantage of that. Games, there were, all games took natural advantage because it was more powerful. And yeah, that would happen with a Switch Pro, but with the new Nintendo 3DS, they specifically built that so they could have a portable version of Xenosaga Chronicles.
Yeah, there
Which
are like
the
2 or 3 games that it works for.
right. And Nintendo themselves just hasn't quite reached that point. Of course, there could be other factors that are also belaying a Switch Pro or whatever they plan on calling that. Keep in mind we still got a chip shortage going on here. Um, but who knows how much that is affecting Nintendo Switch production or whatever. Like, Nintendo's never going to tell us how that's going. Like, now on the opposite end of the spectrum, the Steam Deck is a system without a game or games. And this is actually important because Valve cared enough about VR to where they went and built a full-fledged, AAA VR game, Half-Life Alyx, specifically because they wanted to really showcase what room scale VR could do for games. Why they're putting out a Steam Deck is a bit murkier. Like, they haven't really announced an ethos behind it, which is concerning because Valve doesn't have the greatest track record when it comes to hardware. Like, do you remember Steam machines?
I
Like,
recall that they was a thing.
yeah, that's about what people recall from that. Now, I'll grant you that was more of an indirect. We'll let PC manufacturers handle this kind of deal. It still went tits up fairly quickly.
Well, and also a knee-jerk reaction to Windows 8 that never was a
Yeah.
problem.
Now, mind you, like, that actually bore fruit because that was the thing that eventually led us to, well, the Steam Deck here. Like, but other Valve failures, the Steam controller. Now, in that case, that was because they ran afoul of some patents. There was actually a long-running court case that got not settled, like it was actually decided in court, and Valve was actually found to have violated those particular patents. So that's actually why the Steam controller died. Same reason why the PlayStation 3 6-axis didn't have Rumble for a time, because they were running through a patent case. Like, there's a Steam, which didn't go. At the end there, they were literally selling it for about $15. Like,
For what?
and some people would cite the index itself. I'm like, I'm not there on the index. Like, Valve has supported it with not just Half-Life Alyx, but the lab. Apparently, they've got like 2 or 3 more projects in development for VR. And yeah, there have been some indies that take advantage. The Valve Index isn't the Oculus Quest, I'll grant you, but it's not aiming to be a mass market device. It's aiming to be, it's fulfilling Valve's ambitions in VR. Valve is in a position where they can go, I want to make a VR system and I want to showcase what we can do in VR. Now, which is a pretty expensive position to be in, because that shit ain't cheap.
It's nice to have that kind of money to burn.
Uh-huh. With the Steam Deck, I'm not sure why this is coming out. I mean, people are apparently going nuts for it. Pre-orders have been fairly robust. But, from my perspective, I'm not really seeing the need for this over like a mid-range laptop. For what
it
you
might
can
have
play.
to do with something called the GPD or whatever. They're like mobile Windows PCs that you can kind of game on the go with.
I guess.
Well, there is something to be said for having button controls for some games, but you could also just get a controller for your laptop.
Right. Granted, this being a PC-derived device, it's got a shit ton of buttons and it's got 2 trackpads. In spite of that, it's not the most ergonomically friendly thing I've ever seen. Mainly because they kind of went so nuts with having those other buttons. The face buttons are just crammed up there in that right corner.
Yeah, they're way off the edge, and the sticks are a little bit awkward too.
Yeah,
probably to make
Sega Nomad has better ergonomics.
It's probably to make extra room for the touchpads that they probably are trying to emphasize, because it's like the only thing that makes it different. But
well, it's like also because once again, it's PC gaming. You need a mouse support thing there. It's why have their fucking trackpads.
And the one on the PlayStation works when people remember that it's there.
Right. And presumably this thing has a touchscreen, I'm guessing.
I'd hope so.
Well, yeah. If I'm remembering, it's got a virtual keyboard component. Because the really expensive edition has the virtual keyboard theme.
A special theme for it, because fuck you, we're Valve.
I guess. Now, apparently Valve has really stated that they've worked on the drift issue. For fucking $649, I should hope so. And yeah, the OLED edition of the Nintendo Switch isn't fixing that because the Joy-Cons are the same. Okay, the only thing
if the Joy-Cons aren't changed, then there's no way to do that. I mean, they really should do it as a rolling fix in the Joy-Con production line, but whatever.
Yeah, the only difference between the OLED edition and your normal Switch is the actual screen, which is going to be OLED. So it'll look a lot sharper. It's not that they haven't increased the resolution of that. It's a 720p OLED screen. Presumably they did this because they got that on cheap. I'm like, and it's going to have more.
At 7 inches, you can't really tell the difference between 1080p or 720p and 1080 and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, it is going to be a bit larger than a normal Switch screen, but like 3/4 of an inch, I think. Also, it's going to have more onboard memory. I think 64 gigs, if I'm remembering correctly.
Something like that.
Yeah. But if I had to,
which is nice, although it's still, you're going to supplement it with a SD card probably.
Of course.
I think I have 128 gigs in mine.
Yeah. Like, the Valve Steam Deck is probably selling right now on the whole novelty of the thing. It's just, once again, Valve hasn't put a game out specifically, you'd think there'd be like a Dota game planned for this, or an Underlords thing, or something new, or whatever. Valve doesn't really have a mission statement for this. They're just doing it because. And I'm concerned about that because, once again, they don't have the best track record with keeping up with their hardware endeavors. Will this be different? I suppose time will tell how well it sells, kind of deal. But is it a threat for the Nintendo Switch? No.
Until it can natively play Mario without fucking, an emulator.
Yeah. But I'm like, that kind of gets into what I'm talking about. The OLED edition is going to be launching right alongside Metroid Dread.
Mhm. With a special Metroid Dread all-white color modded version that I don't like.
Right. The point is they are launching this new hardware alongside new software. Valve is taking more, Steam App Store model. Like, it's got Steam on it. You can play all your games, presumably.
Or at least all of them that can work in Steam OS.
Well, yeah, that there is the question of compatibility, or at least native compatibility. Once again, if you're deranged enough, you can run Windows on this.
Yeah, but you have to buy a copy of Windows. It doesn't come with it.
Right. Look, somebody's going to do that.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that the Steam box is going to be using Wine to run Windows programs under, basically using Wine, it can run Windows apps on Linux. And then that way you can run your entire Windows Steam library on this box, even though it's a Linux box.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And that should work reasonably well enough. And as far as their AAA game claims, now keep in mind it is working like the Nintendo Switch. It's got the handheld mode. It's got the dock mode. Dock sold separately. But they may be basing it off of docked mode. And that is another complaint about the new Nintendo Switch. It's because Nintendo's doubling down on the handheld side of things instead of focusing on the dock side of things. I suppose, but this is still it's a minor refresh. So, what could they do in terms of the dock that was minor? Yeah, it's a head scratcher to be sure. Like I said, it will be interesting to see how the Steam Deck fares. As I said, pre-orders are robust, but the pricing, and apparently, this is a painful price point for Valve, which means they're still losing money on this, which is also concerning. That's another reason why Nintendo goes cheap for their consoles. It's because they're cost effective. Something like the Wii U is the exception, not the rule. Nintendo likes to start out making money with their hardware, not get there with their hardware. But
you have to look at the finances of consoles versus what Steam is doing. Nintendo can sell their boxes, the Wii U, the Switch, etc., for below cost because since they have a lock on certain software, then they can make all the profit on selling you the software, like Mario games, Link games, and so forth. The Steam
and
device,
yet they usually still don't, which is weird.
Yeah, that's the weird thing about Nintendo. Their consoles are usually below cost. They actually make money off their hardware most of the time. Not all the time, but most.
Yeah, but that's also because that when Nintendo makes their hardware, they don't put the best and the fastest and the latest cutting edge technology in it. They just put in what works because again, they're making their own games specifically for the platform to maximize the platform because they don't care about AAA games. Whereas something like the PlayStation and the Xbox, they have to put in the most expensive cutting edge hardware because that's what people are expecting to play the modern cutting edge games. And that, of course, costs money.
Yeah. I'm like,
Also, last time they tried cutting edge hardware with the GameCube, well, that didn't go too well.
no, it didn't. Or I guess you could say the Wii U, or at least that was Nintendo's idea of what cutting edge was. Like, yeah, that was not good. Like, but yeah, Nintendo likes things cost effective. Like they will continue to be so. Valve is a bold new frontier here. So how it will fare, it's anybody's guess. It certainly has more cachet than like the Stream Deck. This is an actual PC console hybrid thing. I got confused with the Steam Deck and saw an uptick by very, very confused people. So
I would imagine.
yeah. Still, I am interested to see how this all plays out. Personally, I don't really have an interest in the Steam Deck. I have a laptop. It's about serving the same functionality. Only, I can hook up an actual mouse to it. That's it. That is an actual question I have with the Steam Deck. Like, will you be able to hook up an actual mouse to it
You
and a
should be
keyboard?
able to.
I should hope so
I
because
think it said it had USB ports.
yeah, I really hate trackpads. I have always hated trackpads since like the 90s. Anyway, so I think that'll about do it for this topic and indeed this episode of Fragments of Silicon. The week ahead. So, as mentioned, I do believe we are planning on having a new episode of Last News Desk on the Left. Certainly haven't gotten any cancellation notices for it.
Yeah.
So, well, I figure if they were going to come, they would have already come. So, we are expecting that in about 15 minutes here. No Friday show this week. We did have one planned, but the guest requested a delay for personal and professional reasons. That'll be happening next month. On the Sunday reviews, we'll be having reviews of Artist of Fortune, Distant Worlds, Fate of the Pharaoh, Dreaming Sarah, and Brickbreaker Heart Collector. So I guess until about 15 minutes from now, I shall wish you good gaming.